Welcome to Kelso Consulting's seminar on how to get your business to the top of Google, where we'll be explaining 6 straightforward steps for you to follow to achieve this. In terms of many of the people on here, we've got a lot of people who've joined us, 40 people at least at the moment. Many of you, I recognise your names, you know us, and there's people here who are new to Kelso Consulting as well. Welcome to everybody. Just say a little bit about who we are. So Kelso Consulting, we're a public relations agency. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're all about building reputations for businesses, sort of reputations that helps businesses outpunch their competitors, whether it's larger businesses they face or indeed niche challengers or head-on competitors. Ultimately, it's credibility that sells, and it's reputation that gets you through the doors with decision makers. And we help B2B businesses build their authority and from that build their reputation. A lot of businesses fall into what we call the celebrity mindset trap. They think it's all about publicity, it's all about getting their name out there. Not so. It's all about credibility, and certainly getting coverage in the national media helps, and that's the sort of thing we deliver. Awards help, case studies, events, blogs, strong thought leadership, all of these things help build credibility, and that's what we work with businesses of all sizes to help them achieve. So we're looking at getting to the top of Google's. There's a number of elements, and we'll be touching on most of those as we go through over the next hour. Do send me through questions at the end. If we've got time, I will tackle them. And if we don't have time, I will email you an answer. And indeed, send questions through at any time. There's various elements that go into getting to the top of Google, which ultimately is one of the most lucrative places for any sort of business, particularly those that sell online like software as a service, or indeed those that are selling internationally and around the world. But for any sort of B2B business, and the sorts of things Google is looking for, well, first of all, you need to make your website relevant to your target audiences. You need to do the sorts of things that give you credibility with Google. You need to maximize traffic from the various sources, whether it's organic or indeed paid for. And once you've gone to all the effort of getting people to your website, most businesses, particularly B2B ones in our experience, need to do try much harder, be more effective at actually converting that traffic into leads rather than have a little contact us button hidden somewhere on the web, passively on the website. Now, can I just say that this webinar is not for businesses if you are in a highly competitive area like, for example, insurance, and you want to get to the top of a search where people put in something hugely competitive like insurance. This isn't the webinar for you. You need to be spending large sums of money on a search engine optimization agency. But this webinar, by contrast, is very much for most B2B businesses, and it may be that you have an SEO agency already and you want to understand a bit more about what they're doing, what needs to be done, what you could be doing. It's very much for people who, for whatever reason, don't have a budget for an SEO agency and need to do it themselves. And it's particularly for people who may sometime down the line get an SEO agency but want to build strong foundations ahead of that, so they're not paying for the basic stuff that they can easily sort out themselves. And it's certainly our experience that in most B2B areas, actually that sort of basic stuff, if done competently, achieves fast and dramatic results, because most B2B businesses, and probably your competitors, aren't doing SEO terribly well. Now, you may well have come across this demand as well yourself, that you maybe your bosses have and your colleagues want it as well. Quick, zero cost results that involve little effort. They're politically uncontroversial and will work from yesterday, that will dramatically propel your firm ahead of your competitors, generate numerous leads that come showering in. Well, we'll try with one or two of those along the way, but the reality is the world doesn't work like that. I've promised 6 straightforward steps, and they will indeed be straightforward, but I'm not promising that they won't involve effort. If you don't want effort, I'm sorry, but it's a highly competitive area, and you need to be prepared that, at least in the world of business, that some effort is involved. So let's have a think about what appears at the top of Google, just to set what we're trying to achieve. And this was research I did a while back for, I was looking for chartered accountancy firms in Reading. So I put in Reading chartered accountancy firm. Now, if you try this result, and indeed any other search, your search might appear different to mine. There's a number of reasons, most of which are due to Google and indeed Bing and all these other internet companies searching and spying on us secretly. They would say it's to get better, more relevant, personalised results. Maybe that is indeed part of it. So if we look at this search, first of all, right at the top, we have Google ads. These are paid for advertisements. Now, a lot of people say to me, no one ever clicks them. Well, Google didn't get to be one of the world's most valuable organisations by people not clicking on them. The research I've seen is that about 10 or 15% of people click on those. It slightly depends on the area, but anyway, people do click on them, and they're at the top. Secondly, you'll see the map. This is Google local search, and what it's doing, these organisations have either Google has worked out that they are local, or they've gone to the Google Maps and added their organisation to it, so that whenever someone searches in the vicinity of Reading, and indeed Google's very clever and realises that it's Reading and not a search about reading, it's realised it's a geographical search, that these ones appear. In terms of free and low cost quick wins, that's something for your business. If you have one office, dozens of offices, whatever, make sure each of them is appearing on Google local search. If it's not, add it in. Below that, you get the main organic searches, and this is the area we will be primarily focusing on later on. And this is the area where most people click, but clearly a lot of people click on local search and advertisements. And the reality is that for most searches, people don't go much further than page 1. So if you're a Reading chartered accountancy firm and you're not appearing on page 1, your competitors and the others who are appearing on page 1 are getting dramatically more traffic from Google. And indeed, it's the top 2 or 3 or 4 relevant searches on the first page of Google that get disproportionately more traffic than those lower down. So again, it's not just a question of are you appearing in the first, in the second or third page. It's a question of, are you appearing in the first page, and are you appearing as prominently as possible? Here is another one I did. You will see again at the top, we're searching here for HR software. We have ads at the top, we have more ads at the bottom. Google realised it wasn't a geographic search, so didn't put in the geographic element. But what it did do, interestingly, was think maybe I was after a definition of HR software, and it picked a website with a definition of what HR software actually is and put that up there. So by providing that piece of information from a reasonably credible website, they have done very well indeed. And then you'll see a bit later on the results for that have come up through organic search. So one of the things you need to be doing is thinking, where are we appearing? It's very straightforward to do. You can go to a Google browser, type in the sorts of searches that people looking for your product or service would put. Clearly, we're not talking about your name. We're talking about the searches that people who don't necessarily know you are doing. The main thing to do is to do it, though, in the private browser mode, because that removes much of the data that Google is collecting from you. Not all of it, but some of it. The importance of this is if you keep typing searches in your browser, particularly if you keep clicking on your own website, Google skews the result, so your own website starts appearing more and more prominently, so it's not very representative. The best thing to do is to do it from the private browser mode. Okay, so looking at what Google likes, because ultimately Google is providing a service, not to you, a business. It's providing a service to the sorts of people who use Google to search, because ultimately if they find relevant stuff really quickly and easily, they're going to use Google more often. Google is a customer-centric organisation. That's what it's ultimately looking to achieve. It does not want people to use Google and go onto poor websites. And by poor websites, could be websites that don't give them the right sort of information, or it could be websites that are old, that are clunky, that are slow, that aren't mobile enabled, that have lots of broken links on them. So Google assesses your website for all sorts of things, and ultimately if you've got the sorts of things I just mentioned, then it's going to give you a low ranking, and no matter what else you do, you're not going to appear very prominently. So the first thing is to sort out your own website. Are you giving a good user experience? And if you have an old-fashioned website, it's not mobile enabled, it's slow to load up, it's on maybe it's on a server that isn't very fast. Ultimately, whatever you do, Google's not going to like it. So that sort of area needs sorting out. Number two, Google likes your website to have links from other credible websites. So certainly if you've got an SEO agency, a lot of the things they will be doing is link building to achieve this. And indeed, a lot of our work, particularly with software as a service clients, is to make sure that we're getting online links from high credibility media websites, so typically trade publications. It's quite hard to get them in national media, but national newspapers, but it's not unheard of. But particularly the high credibility trade and professional titles, as these are the sorts of things that Google really ranks. So if you've got links from high credibility websites to your website, Google notices these and it thinks, wow, your website must be credible. Lots of people are talking about it, they're linking to it, they're recommending it. So number two, have links, the more the merrier, as long as they are, of course, from credible websites, not spammy ones. The next thing Google wants is lots of content on your website. Now, we'll be talking a bit later on about how to make this relevant and the sorts of things you need to do, but ultimately Google likes websites where there's lots of content and where the content gets updated. And Google likes a range of content, so certainly text is very, very important, but it likes images, it likes videos. The more of range of content you have, the more Google will like your website. So later on we'll primarily be talking about text, but also do think about video, images, graphics, that sort of thing. Now, we've talked a bit about what Google likes, but how are we going to get you to the top of Google? Well, the first thing is there are billions of searches done every week, not millions, billions of searches. So the first question is, what searches do you want to appear at the top of? There's clearly, if you provide HR software, or if you provide, if you're a management consultant, there's no point you appearing at the top of searches that aren't relevant to the sorts of things you provide. And the first of our 6 steps you need to follow is you really need to know in detail who you are targeting. Now, a lot of B2B firms I've come across are good at this. They create clear personas. They have a strong idea of who they are targeting. By contrast, others do not. They have very, very vague ideas of who they are targeting, like all SME businesses or all businesses in the southeast, or all owner-managed businesses in London. Very, very vague very, very vague ideas of who their proposition is relevant for. I can't, within the times of this webinar, go into all the benefits of doing a proper persona for each of your specific target audiences. Suffice to say, that's what you need to do. And if you have a vague target like all SMEs or all corporates or every business or something very vague like that, what you have isn't a strategy. It's an absence of strategy. You need to have clear strategies of who you are particularly focusing on, so you can be very compelling to them rather than uncompelling to everybody. Okay, we'll move on. Once you have your personas, for each persona, but I would start with one and then pick up the others in different phases. But for each persona, you need to clearly think about what are the search phrases they would use if they were looking for your sort of service. So clearly we're not talking about what is your name. We are talking about what are the sorts of things they would search for. So going back to the example searches we were using earlier on, someone may start with chartered accountants, but I think the reality is for most businesses, they'd put in something more specific, or they might start with chartered accountants and think, oh, blooming hell, a lot of irrelevant stuff comes up, I'd better refine it. So you need to think about all those levels of refinement people are going to be using. And this is where it gets really important, because if you just have 1 or 2 word search phrases, then these are highly competitive, but most of the people using them are very irrelevant to you. So if you are a law firm, people who put in lawyers, well, the vast majority of those are never going to be relevant to you. What you want is people who are putting in the specific phrases. So these are what is termed long tail search phrases. And the importance of those is if you have thought through your personas, there is a very high probability of converting those. Now, clearly, there's a lot fewer of those, but the strategy for B2B firms, unless you have unlimited resources, and I suspect you do have limited resources, is that you want to focus on those that are most relevant to you with a high probability of conversion. So in the example here, which is not a B2B example, but it's one that we will all be able to grasp very quickly. If you were an online shoe store, well, you could spend a lot of effort coming to the top of when people put in shoes, and maybe that might be one of your strategies. But maybe you might put more effort into men's shoes, because people who type in men's shoes are probably they're probably people who are looking to buy men's shoes. Well, maybe, but perhaps you want to put even more effort into coming top when people put red Nike men's running shoes, because those people are almost certainly in active search and buying mode. They may well be comparing different types of shoes, and they want to compare Nike with Adidas with whatever, or maybe they particularly have already decided red Nike men's running shoes are the relevant ones for you. Most people probably don't type that in if they're idly browsing around. So you need to think for your business, what is your business equivalent of red Nike men's running shoes? Because first of all, it's much easier for you to get to the top of Google for that. And secondly, when someone searches it, it's much more likely that you will be able to convert them. So if you sort of think the elements in long tail searches for your prospects, well, there might be a geographic element to them. There may be a product service element to them. There may be an industry sector element. Maybe they would include particular phrases of buzzwords. And also what I'd like to talk about is for you to think about the different stages of the buying cycle that your prospect will go through, because again, that will affect the sorts of searches they use. So what do I mean by that? Well, you probably are familiar with the concept of the buyer journey. So in this one, people start with a business problem, they get some ideas, they in the end latch onto a favoured solution, then they look for suppliers, they shortlist them, they go through some decision-making process. That might be a formal tender, or it might just be have a look at 3 websites and decide on the one they like the most. Or indeed, in the case of software as a service, they download some example ones and give them each a try, and ultimately there's a purchase and a decision. Now, what my observation on most B2B businesses, particularly those in professional and consultancy services, but not exclusively, is they put all their effort into we are wonderful type content, which is for people who've already decided what they want. So law firms put most of their effort into why they are better than other law firms. Tech firms put all their effort into why our tech solution is better than other tech solutions. Now, this is very important. I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing this, but what I do say is that by doing this, you have missed out on a large number of opportunities. The first opportunity you have missed out on is people whose business problems might be solved by your type of solution, but it might be solved by somebody else's solution. So for instance, if someone has a high employee absentee problem, if you're a tech provider, then you may have a tech solution to this. But law firms have a solution to this as well. Maybe other sorts of consultants have solutions to this as well. Maybe healthcare providers have solutions to this. Maybe all sorts of people have solutions to absenteeism and reducing it. So if you're purely aiming at those who've decided to go down the legal route, you've missed all the people at an earlier stage looking at different solutions. The second reason is the earlier you engage with someone in the funnel, the more likely they are to shortlist and choose you, and indeed they may not even look at other suppliers. And indeed, the higher value and the more critical the solution is, then actually the more likely they are to go with people who engage them earlier in the buying process. So let's have a look at an example of what I'm talking about, and then you can apply this in the context of your own business. So imagine you are a hotel operator and you've got high staff turnover problems, and you think, this is a bit of a nightmare. What am I going to do? Well, I can't be the only hotel in the country that has this problem. I'll Google some solutions. So maybe the first thing you do is that you Google reducing staff turnover ideas. Okay, well, you might find a whole range of different options there. I mentioned some of them earlier. But you decide that actually you like the idea of some sort of software solution. Maybe your systems and processes are a bit chaotic and you like the idea of a software solution. So you decide you want to look for different types of software, and you ultimately decide that you want software that's specifically for hotels and is cloud-based because you like the idea of that. So you go down that route. You start looking at suppliers of this. Perhaps to shortlist suppliers, you start looking for case studies. You want to see providers who are providing this solution to your type of hotel. You own 10 hotels. You don't want it software that's relevant to bed and breakfasts. You don't want software that's used by the Marriott chain. Okay, so you refine it a bit more. There's still a lot out there. So you decide, well, we'd like the best, so we want some award-winning ones. So you start an even longer and more specific search phrase of award-winning cloud HR software for hotels. Now, clearly, those people who've thought to try and optimize at those sorts of different stages are going to be picking up a wider range of relevant leads than those people who've purely got content around how wonderful their software is. Okay, so you know who you're targeting. You know the sorts of search phrases they are looking for. Now you need to know where you are ranked on Google for each phrase. This is very important, first of all, because some of them you may well rank very prominently. You need to know this. So first of all, if they just need that little extra push to get you from page 2 to page 1, they're the ones to go for. Secondly, if you're already ranking at the top of Google, there's no point polishing that search phrase. You want to start working on the ones that are below. Now, I talked a bit earlier about how you can find it out for individual search phrases, but it's not uncommon if you've started well onto this process to have dozens, even hundreds of search phrases. Well, there is software that will automate it for you. All you need to do is look online and you will see various types of software that can automate that process for you. So you're not checking Google individually hundreds of times each month. Now, this is where the work comes in, because ultimately you need to have, by the end of the process, and quite frankly this is a process that won't end, you need to have a page optimized for each phrase. Now clearly this is going to be a paint in the Forth Bridge type scenario potentially, and it's where prioritization and regularity come in. If you target those phrases where you have the most chance of getting to the top, ensure you're keeping those phrases where you're already at the top up there, and have a systematic plan for other phrases, then quickly you can build strong results. And I say this from having done large amounts of SEO on the Kelso page and indeed with other websites as well. But again, if you start targeting highly competitive areas from a low base, it's going to be hard work. If you start targeting long tail search phrases which have a reasonable chance of being used by your sorts of target audience, where quite frankly you will probably not find huge amounts of competition, then you can start achieving results very quickly. First of all, through appearing at the top of Google, and secondly through, over the months, weeks ahead, them starting to deliver traffic and conversions to your website. So, what are the things you need to be doing? First of all, have relevant content to those sorts of phrases on your website. So, for instance, if you are a chartered accountancy in Reading looking to come up to the top of Google, you need to be talking about the accountancy, tax and business challenges of businesses in the Reading area, or indeed the Berkshire area, or indeed the Thames Valley area as well. You need to help Google realize that this content is relevant to them. So you need to really flag it up. So what's your key phrase? It needs to appear in the URL. That's the website address page at the top that appears in the browser. So make sure it appears in the URL. Make sure it appears in the headings and subheadings, as Google is particularly keen to see it there. Make sure it appears several times, not hundreds of times, not once, several times in the text. And images have such things as meta text, descriptions, things like that in the background. Make sure it appears in those as well. Have the sorts of things Google likes on the page: video, inbound links, images, podcasts, whatever it is, but have those sorts of things as well. And Google doesn't want to see a website with lots of pages each on different subjects that have no relevance to it. It wants to see that you're tackling the subjects regularly, so link it to other pages with similar content on your website. So in the case of Kelso Consulting, we do lots around thought leadership, so we want to make sure that our blogs on thought leadership link to other blogs on thought leadership. Our blogs relevant to professional service firms and marketing link to other blogs on professional service firms and marketing. So you see the sort of thing. It wants to see a cluster around particular areas, not just one on tax, one on corporate finance, one on insolvency, one on yada yada. And then don't keep these pages a secret, promote them. I mentioned through perhaps having some sort of PR, so certain of your pages get linked to from websites. Indeed, ideally, you can post them on if you're clever, onto the comment section of certain websites as well. Get your SEO agency link build into them, promote them through your marketing, through your social media, through tweets, through LinkedIn posts, that sort of thing, to ultimately get more traffic and further inbound links. Now, clearly you can't do this for every page, but certainly do it for important ones. As I mentioned, if you're having a cluster of them, make sure they link to one that's particularly prominent in that cluster. And going back to it, make sure that that page is providing a great experience. Make sure it doesn't have any broken links. Check back in the future, because sometimes you link to websites and then they change things, so it becomes broken inadvertently. And don't just have a passive page where you've got lots of great content. Really make sure that you've got prominent calls to action to get people getting in contact with you, signing up to maybe your mailing list, your newsletter, or have what's even better, have some prominent content they can download that's relevant to it, a white paper, a report, an invitation to an event. But ultimately, make sure that that page is working hard to turn the traffic that goes to it into leads that you can follow up with, and then you are in the driving seat. Don't have what we see all too often, lots of passive pages where you're expecting people to drift around your website, decide you're amazing, and then get in touch. Sadly, the world doesn't work like that, not least when you've got lots of people who are shopping around and comparing different firms. Okay. So the sorts of things you can have listed there. So you need to be blogging regularly. That doesn't mean you can't optimize all your other pages, but you need to be blogging regularly to create SEO optimized fresh content. Now, there are lots of businesses out there that do blog regularly and are very successful at it. And there's lots of businesses that have tried it, they've put up a few, and then it's all drifted off. How do you avoid, well, first of all, how do you avoid being in the second category? But more likely you are in the second category already. How do you get it to work the next time round? And the first problem people have is, where do we get the ideas for our blogs? Well, there are lots of ways of getting ideas for your blogs. And the first thing is to answer the sorts of questions that your clients regularly ask you. You will come across the same question time and time again. Going back to the HR example, if you're a professional advisor, you probably have come across people asking you, I get lots of absenteeism, how do I deal with it? Answer that question. There's also probably lots of problems you come across at clients where you just think, why do people always do this? Why do people always do X, Y, or Z? Well, that's good. Those are good blog topics as well. Start dealing with those. The sorts of common mistakes you come across. Maybe you want a tech solution, in which case the HubSpot blog topic generator is pretty good. It will give you several ideas. 2 or 3 of them are rubbish, 2 or 3 are okay, 2 or 3 of them are fabulous. I could write that straight away. Read the media that's relevant to your prospects. So if you are targeting SME businesses, quite frankly, yes, you should be reading Accountancy Age and Economia, but you should be reading Director magazine and smallbusiness.co.uk and the business section of the Telegraph and all these sorts of places. There will be lots of things coming up that's relevant to businesses, the sorts of businesses you're targeting, that you have a perspective on from your expertise, blog about it. The big thing, though, is if you want to do it systematically, have some sort of thought leadership. Now, by thought leadership, I don't mean insights that are so groundbreaking that it's going to cause a revolution in the world, although sometimes that term, which I think is an awful one but is widely used, implies. What we're talking about is interesting things and fresh perspectives on topics that are important to your clients. You could be providing this through case studies, informed viewpoints, perhaps have a panel discussion and write it up. Have events and record what people are saying. By record, it could be a video recording or it could just be taking notes. Some sort of analysis of problems. Accountants are doing this, have been busy doing this week when they've been looking at the impact of the budget. Indeed, for one of our clients, we've been in the FT and the Times with this sort of thing. It makes for good blog content as well. And indeed, commissioning research as well. Now, the benefits of investing some effort in these sorts of things is that if you do your campaign properly, you put the effort into generating strong content, and then you can utilize it for weeks, and if done properly, months, to fuel dozens of blogs, tweets, LinkedIn posts, things like this. So you create a resource that then feeds all these sorts of channels, your blogs, for months and months afterwards. So if you're a business of any sort of size, thought leadership, if you generate thought leadership, then it gives you all the sorts of powerful content that makes doing the blogs and all the other things you need to do easy, as you've got lots of great insights and data you can continue reusing. The other way to get to the top, as we were discussing, is to pay for Google AdWords. Now, the reality is that we don't have time to go into this on this program. It's a big topic. Now, I used to say that Google AdWords was relatively straightforward and you could probably play around and do it. And indeed, that was my experience. I have to say, it seems to be getting more and more complicated all the time, despite Google's attempts to simplify it. You can certainly pick up Google AdWords if you are willing to invest the time, but my advice actually is to get specialist help. So I have changed my advice on that, unless of course you're willing to invest a fair amount of time in it. If you need some specialist help in it, email me afterwards. So Google AdWords, paying to get to the top, is the alternative. So what are your next steps when you pick this up? You need to book some time into your diary. You need to, with your team, make sure that you have some clear target segments, and for those segments have some personas. Maybe tackle them all, more likely prioritize, tackle one or two. You need to have search phrases for each of these personas. You need to know where you rank on Google. You need to start optimizing. First of all, optimize existing pages that you can push them higher up. But then you're going to need to start generating more content. Well, you may be generating extra web pages, in which case make sure that they are doing some of the heavy lifting on this. But more likely you're going to have to start creating fresh content, and blogging along the lines we've discussed is the easy and fast way to do it. And also Google particularly likes blogs as well. So again, it will have extra oomph. Above all, don't do it all yourself. Involve others in creating ideas, whether it is your team members or your colleagues or departments or however it is. Don't do it all yourself unless you really, really love blogging. get others involved in the creating ideas, brainstorming, drafting blogs, creating the content. So we'll be coming up to questions in a moment, but just a little advertising interlude for how Kelso Consulting can help you, and indeed how we help other businesses. Well, first of all, if you need someone to get involved with creating the keyword strategy, we can certainly do that. We're very good at drafting compelling and interesting blogs that are optimized around your key phrases. We are very, very good at creating compelling content. Indeed, we've won lots of awards for thought leadership campaigns we have undertaken. We are very good at creating links from high credibility media websites to your website to boost all aspects of your SEO by getting your domain authority and credibility with Google increased. And generally, we're very good at helping you create a powerful communications, content and thought leadership strategy, which makes all of this much more focused and effective and ultimately easier. And indeed, we've got some webinars on just that coming up, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But first of all, some questions. Okay, so we've got a few questions here. Let me run through them as they start to come through. So first question is, should we use videos and podcasts and how many? So yes, you should definitely do those. Ultimately, the more the merrier. I think you've got to, there's a whole range of things you could be doing. There's explainer videos in particular parts of it. Maybe you want to change, not just blog, but vlog and have a regular video session. Well, certainly those sorts of things can be very effective by people who are prepared to commit to them. I have to say, you find all sorts of excuses from organisations, from people in it, why not to do it. But what I would say is where people have invested in them, and that doesn't necessarily mean making them hugely expensive. It's more important to invest the time and effort in making the content strong and relevant, not necessarily in vast, expensive video production, although if you think that's relevant to your market, then that's something you need to think about as well. But it's the investment of time and effort to make it relevant. So yes, video and indeed podcasts, very good. What is the right amount to blog? So both, or right frequency to blog. Well, HubSpot, who are a big content management system provider, they say the people who are most effective are people who blog at least twice a week. Now, I have to say that for many people is quite a high benchmark. So the important thing is to blog on regularity and decide that regularity and then do it. So if you've got the resources to do it twice a week, that's amazing. If you're able to do it once a week, that's fabulous. If you are able to do it fortnightly, then do it monthly. The main thing is to do it, and do it with the frequency that you decide. How long should blogs be? Is the next question. Well, I am told by SEO gurus, and I do not class myself as an SEO guru, I simply am relaying the sorts of things that have worked well for us and our clients, is that blogs need to be at least 240, 250 words, or rather Google likes pages with at least this sort of content on it. So to keep Google happy, you need to have at least that sort of content. However, what and you'll often find people saying, oh, it doesn't have to be long because people bounce out really quickly. They only look at the first few words. Not so. People make their mind up early, and if they think it's boring, irrelevant, or dull, then indeed they do bounce out. But people who find articles online that are relevant and important to them will continue, and they will read very long content. Indeed, I heard the person from Channel 5 News, which has actually put large amounts of effort into online content, and they said their most successful articles are the longest and most in-depth ones, because people who are interested in them read them, will invest the time, think it's a good article, and then share it. So don't listen to the voices that say it's got to be short. The longer the better, but people will bounce out if you aren't delivering value right at the start and as they go down. So don't pad it out, but if you can do a long in-depth article, actually a lot of people, indeed the people most likely to be your clients, are the people who are most likely to read it. Okay, question. How quickly will all of this work? Well, it clearly depends on the competitiveness of your areas. So in terms of how long can it take to get to Google, well, I can honestly say we have targeted particular keywords, put relevant content up, and seen them go to Google, top of Google for long tail search phrases very quickly. Now, the reason they went to the top of Google is because there wasn't a huge amount of competition in those particular areas. But our strategy has always been to go to the long tail ones, because if you have enough long tail ones, they will start to bring in relevant leads, because each of them may not be seen very frequently, but in total, first of all, they will be, and secondly, because they are on overlapping subjects, you start to get the cluster effect that Google likes of seeing lots of interrelated relevant stuff, and that helps us get into the medium and indeed the high ranking areas as well. So the Google bit can start working very quickly. In terms of the leads, well, again, it depends on the frequency and the how many people are looking for your service and those sorts of things. Suffice to say, the quicker you start doing it, the quicker it's going to lead to results. What are the best ways for getting people involved? Well, what I think you need to do is do a bit of background research, and indeed maybe the sorts of things we've been talking about earlier, relevant to your organisation, to build a bit of a compelling case along the lines of, here are our competitors, here is us, we're losing out, this is what we need to do. You need a mobilisation and brainstorm meeting. You need to have some sort of editorial schedule where it's clear who's going to do what and when. A lot of people really aren't very good at writing, or even when they are good at writing, they put it off, don't like doing it, takes them a long time. So you may want to think about getting someone to write it. This could be an external freelance writer, maybe there's someone in the team who particularly likes writing and it can be them. Either way, get a writer involved, especially for those people who don't like writing. Give people a clear brief of what you want, when you need it, length, topic, perhaps even the sorts of style they want to do it. maybe show them an example of what a really good blog looks like that you would like them to achieve. But ultimately, someone needs to own this process. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, but someone needs to own the process to make sure it's happening, to make sure the blogs are appearing, to make sure they're being promoted at the other end. Okay, if I've not had the chance to answer your question, my apologies, but what I will do is email you back an answer, and indeed I might follow some of my own advice and put your questions as blogs on the Kelso blog and send you a link to them. So there we go, I am practicing what I preach on that. Okay, so by my watch we have pretty much done an hour. Please do get in contact with us. Also, we will be sharing feedback form. I very much hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, and if you could spend a moment just filling that out, that would be really useful. We'll be sending through a link to this a recording early next week, so you can listen to it and share it with friends and family. And I do hope that you will be joining us on our future webinars as well. Thank you very much.